3, 2, 1, let's roll! Hi there, welcome in another weekly episode where we talk about all sorts of things regarding coaching. I can't believe it's already 15th episode. Today we're gonna talk about the squat. So in the next two episodes we're gonna talk about the squat basically. So if you're interested if you want to know more about the squat, its mechanics, why some people cannot achieve full depth, why some people shift on the left or on the right, and what can we do about it, be sure to check both of them. So without further ado, let's start with today's episode where we take a look at the mechanics. Let's start. Squat is a very common movement pattern which is seen in the gym. This sagittal plane movement is often used as a tool to increase power, strength, hypertrophy, and its variations can also be used to loosen up our hips. Although you could argue that this is sagittal plane movement, our joints still need to have the ability to achieve certain level of transverse movement. The moment we load our body, for example, we add a bar on our shoulders, the lumbar spine becomes less lordotic, turning sacrum into counter nutation. This is where the expansion starts happening. So, if presuming that we're able to descend vertically and not hinging back, this expansion is happening to about 45 to 60 degrees of hip flexion. During descent, relative motion starts happening between sacrum and the innominate. During descent, from about 0 to 60-ish degrees of hip flexion, iliums start ERing, sacrum goes into counter nutation, and this reorients acetabulum into retroversion. This movement, these motions are descending the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor needs to capture the organs, and at the end of the day, the infrapubic angle starts narrowing. If we want to go deeper in a squat, we need to reverse our mechanics. Iliums need to go into IR, sacrum needs to go into nutation, which reorients the acetabulum into anteversion. At the end of the day, we have femurs that are going into internal rotation. This means that the infrapubic angle is gonna widen up, the pelvic floor muscles are gonna ascend, so the contraction will start happening at the anterior, and the pelvic floor muscles, because of the nutation of the sacrum, are gonna elongate at the posterior side. This movement is happening from about 60 to 120 degrees of hip flexion. Proceeding forward to the deepest level of the squat, from about 120 degrees and beyond, again relative motions need to happen between the ilium and the sacrum. Iliums go into ER again, and sacrum counter nutates, but this time is sacrum that is leading the way, which again reorients femurs into external rotation. Hip flexion is necessary for this movement pattern. During walking, we have early stance, mid stance, and late stance. So early propulsion, mid propulsion, late propulsion. If we would be quadrupedal, we would still have all three phases, but the angle in the hip would be different. So basically now when we're walking, late propulsion is at the end range of hip extension. When we are on all four, late propulsion is actually at the beginning stage of hip flexion. This beginning stage is actually the first third of the squat. Second third of the squat is mid propulsion, and last third of the squat is early stance. Now, the main difference between a squat and a hinge is that a squat has a vertical hip displacement in comparison to the hinge, where the hips are going horizontally, are actually getting pushed back. So in a squat, the sacrum needs to be able to go in a counter nutation in comparison to the hinging activities, where the sacrum is nutating in order to keep the spine in its natural curves and to prevent it from overflexing. A squat is a bit more dynamic, and with that I mean that sometimes we need to expand at the back and compress at the front, and sometimes we need to expand at the front and compress at the back. Most often than not, we see all sorts of restrictions and deviations, from forward trunk lean to restrictions in depth to shifting to one side. In the next episode, that will be available only for Patreon subscribers, we will go through most common restrictions and present some potential solutions. So if you want to learn more, I kindly invite you to join our Human Function and Performance Patreon group. The link is at the bottom of this video. Thank you so much for your attention. Stay positive, stay humble, strive for more, and let's start this 2021 with a roar. See you in the next one. Bye.